Jenny Hogan is going to be back tomorrow. I had some computer difficulties, so I had to stop that one because my USB devices kept disconnecting. A little bit of a driver issue for you IT nerds. I am I'm not promoting anything today except for I'm really getting obsessed with this Letterman podcast hosted by Mike Chisholm. He was a guest a while back, but this Canadian dude just loves Letterman. And the latest episode, he had Steven Weiner back on the show. And I tell you, this guy knows everything about Letterman. He has people on that wrote for the show. He has people that worked on the show. If you like Letterman, it's a fantastic podcast. This is totally unsolicited. I love it. You should listen to it. Today, I've got, come on, word. I've got Sam Tallent with me today. He is one of the most quick-witted improvisational comics working today. I watched a lot of his stuff. It's fantastic. He was a new face at Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in 2019. His novel Running the Light, which was the reason I set this up, was called The Definitive Novel About Stand-Up Comedy by Marc Maron. Just one of the best books I've read in years. I'm going to pop a picture of it up here real quick for you so you know what to look for. Sam Talent Run the Light. You can get a lot of different places. You can go to his website and get an autograph copy, and that supports Sam a little bit more than going to Amazon, even though it's what I did because I need it on Kindle. Fantastic book, and we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to bring him up right now. Sam Talent.
Hey, thank you for having me. Hello. Yeah, buy
Thank
the
you.
book off my website, you monsters.
Yes, I'm probably going to get it that way too. Just so I can have a hard copy and get the signature and all that.
Yeah, but yeah, it's available on Kindle, and there's an audiobook too, read by a bunch of different comics. So however you get it, just hopefully you enjoy it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. The first thing I want to ask you is how tall are you?
I used to be 6'5". I think I'm 6'4" now.
Okay, so we're about the same size. We're about the same height.
Oh, you're a behemoth as well.
Yeah, yeah. The
You're a
way I've got my
monster.
camera, you really can't tell. I could be like 4'8", and it, it
You could
doesn't
play.
it doesn't even show.
Yeah, you have a perfectly shaped skull too.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, you could be
Yeah,
the
I
judge
shaved it.
in Blood Meridian if they adapted it.
Yeah,
Big
thank
hulking
you.
man. Yeah,
I um I shaved it during COVID when it started looking like a comb over because I had a bald spot, so it just all came
sure.
off, and now it stays off, and I don't go to the barber.
Yeah, you're lucky. You have a good head shape to be a bald guy.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the book a little bit first. It's funny because this came out, and a lot of comedians. This came out in 2020, right?
Yeah, yeah, right when COVID hit.
Yeah, and a lot of
I
comedians were
needed to
talking
figure out a
about
new
it.
way to pay rent.
Yeah,
All my
and
dates
I,
evaporated, and I was like,
no
what am I going to
doubt,
do? So I put out the book.
but a lot of comedians were talking about it, and I put it on my read list, and I was rereading the Dark Tower series from Stephen King,
Yeah.
and if you know what that's about, it's just a lot of books, it's a lot of pages. And so then I kind of forgot about it, and then I saw it. I don't know why, but I saw it somewhere, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing a lot of flying, I'm doing a lot of stuff, so let's get this book on Kindle. And
Yeah.
I finished it in 2 days because I started on the plane, then I read late into the evening, and then I worked, and then till like 2 o'clock the next 2 in the morning the next evening because I just couldn't put it down.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm glad it captured you in that way. That's very flattering.
I mean, it really shows what comedy's about, and but it also shows where you could possibly go.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
and it's funny because I listened to your interview on Marin, and he said the way comedy used to be, and that's not really true because there's still the shitty dates and the um, promoters or the bookers that book you and all the the FOPs and the roadhouse bars and all that kind of stuff. That still goes on. It just
yeah.
I guess it's just not talked about as much.
No, I mean as long as the bar needs to sell chicken tenders and Bud Light, there will always be comedy. You
Yeah.
know. I think that it's really easy to forget that like our main job as comedians, especially starting out, is to help facilitate people purchasing food and beverage. You know,
Right.
it's the same way they would have like a darts tournament.
Uh-huh.
We just happen to talk and need the attention of people. But yeah, those gigs are out there, man. And I don't know, I do you were you ever subscribed to like it used to be like Yoder gigs and stuff, but then they all kind of like diversified. So there's like Entertainment Max and like Comedy USA.
Yeah, I'm not, but I know people who are, and
Yeah.
yeah,
So I
it's
still get the emails from them because I don't, I mean, I don't do the gigs anymore, but it's very good to be reminded of like how far you've come and where you can return to when you
yeah.
see like we need a comedian on Wednesday in Ogallala, Nebraska. It's the gig is at noon and there's no hotel, $200. You're like, oh God. Oh no.
And people take it.
Of course. I mean, yeah, I'm not condemning those people that do, but you have to sell a lot of merch to make that gig work.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. So the idea of the book, how did this come to you? Because, I think everybody knows getting into it that it's about stand-up comedy and it's dark. So
Yeah.
where did this come to you?
Well, I hope people know it's dark because I think some people read it expecting it to be like a laugh riot or like a comedic memoir. And then they get like 3 chapters in and they're like, "Good God, what
Yeah.
happened to this poor young man?" I don't know, man. I've always really liked novels. I love reading fiction and like um I don't think that books with happy endings are good. I like a lot of like truth, you know? I like the
Uh,
most like real to life characters you can get. And I've always liked the idea of characters who risk a lot for very little reward, you know? Like a
mhm,
guy who like puts it all on the line to become a bare knuckle boxer for like $300. I think that the higher the stakes and the lower the reward create really interesting scenarios.
uh-huh.
So I tried to write a different thing, and the first chapter of this book was just going to be a chapter in that book. And then I was like, well, I can write this guy a lot easier than I can write this other stuff. And this guy just like kind of, I don't know. He took over a lot of my thoughts for a while, and I just had to write it. It had to get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, it really sucks you in. Did Billy Ray kind of suck you in? Did it put you in a bad place for a while?
I think it was more like I was like exercising some stuff I didn't know was inside of me. Not like
Uh-huh.
exercising like push-ups, but like, you know, with like an old priest and a young priest in holy water, you know? Uh yeah, it was I think that this fear of becoming this guy is in every comedian and
Uh-huh.
to try and like I don't know, I guess I trapped him on paper so he no longer occupied that space inside of me.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's scary, dude.
Man, it's a Rembrandt as far as I'm concerned, as far as writing. And I'm
Thank
I'm
you.
I'm gonna read it again because it captured me like no book has. It's funny. I'm reading Rita Rudner's memoir right now, and so I
Yeah.
went from your book to that. No, in between that, I read Rich Schneider's book. So I got Running the Light, and Rich Schneider, and then Rita Rudner. So
Yeah, what was the
it's
name of Rich's book?
oh, you'd have to ask. It's on my Kindle.
Yeah.
It's about it's about his stand up stuff, and
Yeah, yeah, I
it's
read it.
good. Yeah,
He reached out to me after he read this book and was like, "Way to go. Now no one's ever going to open my book again." So,
yeah.
I'm glad that you're reading it. I liked that book.
Yeah, yeah, it was a great book.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed, I mean, you said that Billy Ray is somebody that you don't want to get to. You don't want to be that person, but the way Billy Ray took the stage and read the room and was really fast on his feet, that's kind of you though.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to write what you know. And if this was a guy who was writing like perfect jokes and telling them, I don't know how to do that.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of there's a lot of like old school charm in like you know, a charlatanism to what I do, where I'm just trying
Uh-huh.
to be as
Yeah.
funny as possible moment to moment in the room, trying to improvise and trying to riff with the crowd.
Yeah.
So I don't think I could have written a guy who was you know, a very considered and meticulous joke writer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and also I think he had to be good. Like, you know, you've done these kind of rooms. Like the kind of comedy that works in there is not like, you know, highbrow stuff. You have to like
Right.
double the swears and dumb it down. And I liked the idea of him like trying to exist in this in these kind of shows, but also like still having like, you know, he is still good at comedy. He's still good at comedy, and he once was
Yeah.
a great comedian. So I think that that had to come through in order for him to be, I don't know, a palpable character who made sense in these situations.
Right. And it seems like, and I think it's the best way to explain it is he had great muscle memory. And
Yeah,
as far as his performance was concerned, no matter how fucked up he was before he walked on stage, it just showed up.
yeah, and then also like when you learn to do stand up, like drunk or high or stoned, you create all those pathways in your head. Like all your neurons learn to fire
Uh,
with those impediments in the way, those chemicals kind of like fueling them. So I think that like I don't know if he was a great comedian despite or because of his addictions, you know?
yeah. Yeah. I can definitely, you know, you can make an argument both ways.
I mean, I don't think it ever helps anyone to be like drunk or stoned up there, but I think we've all, at least I've definitely like tried to find that perfect cocktail of like, okay, 3 beers and half a joint of indica,
Yeah.
90 minutes before the show, and I'm like the funniest I've ever been. But then you get in that like kind of tough position where you're trying to recreate that chemical cocktail every time,
Yeah.
and that's impossible. And that's how you wind up working in Trinidad, Colorado on a Tuesday at a VFW, you know?
I have definitely, and I think it's my age. I've definitely made the tactical error of having an edible uh, too soon before my set, and I think it's gonna kick in after, or maybe just a little bit during, and I'm just stupid when I get up there. And
Yeah, edibles are a landmine that we all step on, man, because like you could eat the exact same edible, the exact same dosage, but depending on like how much caffeine you've had that day, how much
Mhm.
fat content was in your diet that day, like you would have to recreate that experiment and control for every variable to get that
Yeah.
exact same high every time. Because I've definitely been like, oh, I've eaten a Chiba Chew before I went on. It wasn't a big deal. And then you're
Yeah.
on stage sweating and like, you know, you time travel. You think you've done 45 minutes, you've done 17. You're like, oh
Uh,
God, what have I done?
or
Yeah, it's brutal.
conversely, you thought you've done 40, or you thought you did 17, you did 45.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Time becomes like taffy in those situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like when you started seeing these reviews from, you know, people like Marc Maron reaching out and stuff like that? What was it like to get that kind of feedback?
I mean, dude, the first one was Stanhope.
Uh-huh.
Stanhope, who I've admired my entire, you know, before and after comedy. I think he's just the greatest. He was tweeting about it, and he was like fervent in his celebration of this book. And I remember being tagged on Twitter and him saying like, "This is the best book I've ever read," and just like tears, man. You know,
Uh-huh.
like you know, I'm very grateful the career I have, but like to be uh, you know, kind of anointed by someone who I revere as a king was just otherworldly, dude. And
Uh-huh.
then from there, he got it to Kreischer and he invited me down to his house, and I stayed at Stanhope's house. And then from Kreischer, you know, Ari Shafir to Marc Maron, like it was just universal. Anthony Jeselnik, like I don't know, dude. It was very affirming for sure, and
Uh-huh.
especially during that time when I wasn't getting the usual affirmation that we get as comics, where you're on
Right.
stage every night and people are telling you you're good or you suck. To go from not having that to because of the pandemic to getting it from afar was like, I don't know, dude. It was the best feeling I've ever had in my career. Was comedians liking this book,
Yeah.
because I was always worried that it wasn't going to ring as true to life to them. And when they celebrated it and held it up, I was like very much relieved. Maybe relief was the best feeling, the way I can describe it.
Yeah. Now, when you did the final edit and you got ready to publish, did you read this and know it was that good in your heart?
I mean, I would never put anything out that I didn't think was good or that I
Uh,
wasn't proud of. Um, I was I had shopped this book around to like traditional publishers, and they were not offering a sum of money that my agent said was worthwhile.
Mhm.
And he was like, if you sell like 300 copies of this through your website, you'll make more money than they're offering right now. And I was like, I guess, but um, I kind of took that as like maybe it wasn't good enough to be published.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, having read as many books as I have, I think that it could stand, against some books that have been published, especially contemporary fiction, which is well, don't get me started on that. But I think that there's a lot of books that are put out now are toothless, and they're written by people with MFAs who've never lived a life.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I didn't have an education. I didn't have a college degree until May of this year when I finally got my last credits. But I had lived, and I'd lived this, and I think that there was a truth in this, and I had some confidence in it, but I didn't know that it would be I don't know, universally adopted and acclaimed by like comedians,
Uh-huh.
And then I'm
Yeah.
glad that, this sounds like I'm sounding like such a prick, but like comics did love this book, and the reason that book sold so many copies was because every comic was talking about it on their podcast for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I was fingers crossed that it would be able to stand on its own two legs, but I didn't think that it would receive the acclaim that it did. And I think that
Yeah.
people were surprised by like the prose. I think that they thought that I could write a story, but like I really love sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, word by word writing.
Uh-huh.
I like when there's poetry in the pages. And the books that I'm attracted to are definitely written by people who they're just gorgeous. They're gorgeous wordsmiths. And I was
Yeah.
able to take some of that stuff that I've always liked and try and adapt it to this like dark, gritty world that is
Yeah.
road comedy.
Yeah, you definitely succeeded in that because
Thanks, man.
it's I haven't been sucked in by a book like that for a long, long time. That I just, it's cliche, but couldn't put it down.
Oh,
And
thank you.
it was really it was it was just a punch in the gut, basically. It just hits you like, and yeah, I knew how it was going to end.
Of course, yeah.
It had to,
Mm-hmm.
and you know the fact that he just got that glimmer of hope uh was it was just crushing, just absolutely crushing.
It's the big punchline, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I thought that I don't want to give away too much, but yeah, I mean it had to end that way for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I didn't want to spoil it either. Um, let's get into the stand up because man, you're just a tornado on stage. And is has there ever been an audience that didn't respond to you?
Oh yeah, for
Really?
sure. Yeah, Key
Really?
West earlier this year.
Okay.
I did a week down in Key West at Comedy Key West, which Tom Dustin and Joe Madaus run it. And it's just I bring my wife down there. It's the 1 week of the year she always takes off to go on the road with me
Uh-huh.
because we have so much fun down there. And the last night we were there, I did like 7 nights of shows, and I think it was the Monday they took us on this like sunset cruise, and the boat captain is the guy who owns the club. So we drank like 13 bottles of wine between like 5 of us in like an
Uh-huh.
hour and a half. And I remember being on stage and like there were 2 rival boat crews in the room because it was locals night. So
Uh-huh.
there was like one captain with all of his employees, and then another captain on the other side of the room with all their employees, and they didn't get along. So like by the time, and like God bless him, Tom was tanked too. The feature was tanked. We had a nice, long, beautiful day. And I got up there and I had to I was trying to do my thing, and they were like mad. I think there was just simmering discontent, like, old bad blood between these 2 crews. And one of the boat captains like wouldn't shut up. So I had to tell him, I was like, eventually like, dude, you got to go. So Joe removed him. And then now both rival captain, and now the crews are both mad at me because there's some
Uh-huh.
kind of like, honor amongst boat
Yeah.
people. So the whole room was furious now. So I'm like trying to do crowd work, and I say, ma'am, have you ever been pregnant? Which is, and my wife, I hear someone in the crowd yell out, you have no right to ask her that. How dare you ask her that? And I look out and it was my wife
Uh-huh.
yelling at me. And I was like, oh no. So yeah, that was a bloodbath. By the end of it, Joe was in the back of the room just yelling, tell a joke, Sam. Just tell a joke. Like Rocky's trainer throwing in the towel. Yeah, man, when they're not into like goofing around and I guess being playful, it can be a bloodbath. I think I figured out how to mitigate that response. That's just the job, just figuring out how not to bomb. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and I think I figured it out for the most part, but it still happens. And when it happens and you don't have like a great catalog of jokes to fall back on, it's very difficult to keep your head above water. Because
So
I
how
put
do
out
you?
that I put out a special and it was like I burnt all that material. So now I'm like
Yeah.
very, very dedicated to not doing any old stuff. So I have like probably 20 to 30 minutes of like actual jokes that work, but coming out of pandemic, like trying to figure out I had to start over. I didn't have an act because the special came out during the
Uh-huh.
pandemic. So yeah, man, it's been a steep learning curve.
Yeah. So how do you pivot if you get into a situation like that? If you figure it out, what are you gonna do?
I mean, self-deprecation, agreeing with them, trying
Yeah.
to extrapolate on why they don't like me, and then they're like, and like validating
Yeah.
those feelings that they have. That's typically a good defense mechanism.
That's good. That's good. So when you started out, were you how you are now?
No, no. I started out doing like improv, like long form and short form improv. And then I
Mhm.
tried stand up, and I thought that like when you did stand up, you had to have jokes. I didn't think that they wanted you to improvise. I thought if you went up there and you didn't just have like 10 minutes of material that was written word for word, you weren't doing what they requested of you. So yeah, I was pretty much like hardline joke teller for the first
Uh-huh.
like 5 years of my career until I figured out how to kind of like use the crowd as a scene partner and improvise and that kind of thing.
Uh-huh. Are you
Yeah.
do you feel like this is you on stage now and you're more comfortable and you're more happy with your performance when you're doing what you do now?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, I think that you get addicted to killing, like you have to crush
Mhm.
because the better you get at stand up, the higher the bar should be. I think you have to like your self-imposed like metric of how well it's going. So there was like probably 4 years, like 29, like up until the pandemic of like, okay, I have this like bulletproof 45 to 50 minutes. I know it kills everywhere I go. So I'm going to do it and I'm just going to like pulverize these crowds. And I think having that time off during the pandemic allowed me to like reflect on, well, I guess you can just like keep doing this stuff, but I don't know if I got the same thrill out of it that I was
Mhm.
getting when I would improvise during shorter sets. So yeah, now I'm like trying to figure out the fine line because people now are coming to like two shows. They'll come to like the early show and the late show. So now I have this pressure to, I don't know, give them a second show. Uh, so yeah, I don't know, dude. I'm sorry, I get all rambly. I'm sorry.
No.
I hate like self-reflection on comedy. It seems very masturbatory, but yes, I'm happier doing this is the short
That's what
answer.
this podcast is about. So
Okay, good.
you're supposed to talk more. I'm supposed to talk less.
All right.
Yeah, and what I see you do, it's funny because you're probably my 136th interview, and I've talked to everybody from, the old school folks. I love to talk to the old school folks because I'm
Yeah, me
old
too.
school.
Yeah.
To the hot new ones, to folks that are just working the road, and um, based on everything's I ask advice and stuff like that, and based on everything that I hear from a lot of the old school folks is you just break all the rules. Everything that is supposed to be done in comedy, you stray away from that and do your own thing. Did you, as you were getting into this guy that's on stage now, did you have any comedians say, hey, you really need to have jokes, you need to have a set list, you need to not not attack the audience like you do?
No, I think that was the best part of coming up in Denver is we had like the old guard and then we had like the class like right above me. I mean, it was crazy. Like green rooms in Denver would be Chuck Roy, it would be Rick Kearns, and then Ben Kronberg and Ben Roy and Adam Caton Holland. Nancy Norton, who just won, like, you know, both the Seattle and the Boston Comedy Festival.
Mm,
These were the people who were in the green room when you did New Talent Night on Tuesdays.
mm,
So you got this like huge, just a cornucopia of different comedic stylings. And all that was encouraged in Denver was don't sound like anyone else. You know
uh,
what I mean? So
mm,
like, no one ever came down on me hardline. I think people, you know, the old dogs are excited to watch new tricks, I think.
uh-huh.
You know? Like, I think that the more knowledge you see, you know, like, that's the issue with being a comedian and watching comedy, is, like, you're like, "Okay, that was the correct thing to say there.
Yeah.
Yep, that was the twist. Uh-huh, okay, yep, that was worth the ride. Yeah, that was a good tag right there. Okay, callback." Like, we see it as an autopsy, we don't see it as
Yeah.
the actual animal on the table. So, I think that when you see, like, something that might be a bit different, and I mean, I'm not trying to sound like I fucking reinvented the wheel, but, like, you know, I'm just trying to, like, do things that, aren't maybe predictable in a way,
Mhm.
and definitely things that, like, maybe aren't safe, because there's a I don't know, trying to, like, always kill in a way that's safe is, like, it's not as exciting to me, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to, like, be excited, and the crowd can tell when you're excited, and the crowd can tell when you're just, like, repeating things that you know work, and I think the crowds have a lot more leeway, and they have a lot more give, and they're willing to, like, go with you if they know that you're trying really hard to give them a show that's not gonna be repeated, you
Mhm.
know? And, like, that's really fun for them, and it's fun for me, and, at the end of the night, you just want them to get their money's worth, you know?
Right.
Next time you come to town, you want them to bring a friend, like,
Yeah.
that's all you can hope for, is to grow your people who wanna see you.
Yeah.
But
And
one
I
time,
guess you
man,
couldn't
like,
have got go ahead.
oh, sorry, well, like, I don't know, like, I think we put all this, like, importance into comedy, but I don't know, do you know John Novosad? He used to be Hippie Man.
No.
So John Novosad is one of the Denver legends, and he's, like, you know, just a perfect joke writer. And
Uh-huh.
I remember opening him for him once in Wyoming, and it was 2 shows, and the first show he killed, and I was, like, so up his ass. I was like, "God, you're the best, John. Like, I'm so glad to be here with you right now. Like, you just destroyed." And he was like, "Well, watch my set on the second show." So I'm like, "Okay." So he's like 20 minutes in, he's killing, and then he looks right at me and he says, "Hey, so, does anyone in the crowd remember my name?" And no one knew his name. And he looked right at me and he said, "Okay, all right, back to the jokes." And they just like go to show like how little any of this matters. Like we're just totally like a disposable piece of entertainment for the evening.
Uh-huh.
You know, I think a lot of comedians when they're doing these bar gigs, until you're selling your own tickets and people are coming to see you, like they would prefer if you were a cover band. You know, they'd prefer if you were karaoke.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, for the most part. So yeah, I was
Yeah.
very lucky to like always be reminded in Denver that you don't mean anything, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because, I see what you're doing and you were so in the moment and you look like you're having as much fun as the audience. And I didn't start until I was 52. So that was
Yeah.
like 6 years ago. It's always been a hobby for me. And when I started, I was like listening to all the old school advice and I was clean and, it was never more than PG 13 and all the topics were pretty bright. And it was fun because people laughed. I did okay at it. People laughed. People liked
Yeah.
me. They said after the show it was a great set. But then I started looking inwardly, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of a hobby. This isn't something I'm going to hang my hat on. If I'm going to go on stage, I want to say what I want to say, and I'm angry. I'm a boomer. I'm mad at what my generation did to your generation,
Yeah.
and I cuss a lot. So I'm just going to be me on stage. And so all my material, I'm kind of like in the spot where you are, where all the stuff that went in the special, well, that's kind of gone now.
Yeah.
I've rewritten some of it to reflect how I am now or how I am on stage now, but a lot of it just has to go. And
Mhm.
it's hard, but I feel like for me to do what I want to do up there and to be genuine, I have to be the angry boomer.
Sure, yeah, and I think that, like, finding, like, whatever's exciting for you, and, like, for some people, that is, like, writing a perfect joke and getting up and telling it that night, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm.
And I think that my biggest failure is, I work very hard, but I don't know if I have a lot of discipline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I've never been a good joke writer, and I think I would rather like have to, use my brain and every part of the buffalo on stage every night for 45 minutes and be exhausted than just like sit down and write a damn act, which would
Yeah.
be so much easier and probably better for me emotionally and mentally. But like, I'd rather like write a book or read or go on a bike ride as opposed to like sit down and just like, oh, this is a joke that I could repeat and it would work. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I think we're just like wired different. But I'm glad to hear that you're embracing your true self.
Yeah, I think it's important at this point. And the nice thing is we moved. I live in Huntsville now, and
Alabama.
we're in South Bend, Indiana. So it was a big move. So I got a new crowd, and
Yeah.
I can just reinvent myself, and nobody cares.
Yeah. No, I think that that's great, man. I'm glad you got out of Indiana. I'll say that.
It's nice. It's definitely nice to be south. It's warmer, and I
Yeah.
don't have to worry
So
about
you're in Huntsville,
snow.
Alabama?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you know Scott Eason?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you guys have kind of an eerily similar look.
I'll
I,
tell
I'm
him.
I'm sure that more than one person has been like, "Oh, I love Scott. He's so funny," and they thought that they were talking about you or vice versa.
Yeah.
The different Scotts. I love Eason though. He's a good dude.
He was at I think the second open, he hosted the second open mic I did here. And I'm not one of those guys that sucks up to the host.
Yeah.
So he didn't know who I was. I just put my name on the list and had a beer. And when I went up, I did my kill material because I had to
Right.
pee in the corner. I had to, make sure everybody knew that I wasn't just some dude that walked off the street.
Yeah,
And
it's prison rules.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so at the end of it, I don't remember what he said something like, "Oh, you're a real comedian."
Yeah. Yeah.
That went well. So yeah.
Yeah. One time I did a show in Huntsville at a place I think called The Page, and it was under an overpass.
Okay.
This was maybe 9 or 10 years ago. But I remember like not a lot of people came, and Scott was like, "Hey man, I'm sorry. There's not a lot of money, but they said you can have another chicken sandwich if you want." And back then, that chicken sandwich, that was a big deal. I was like, "Thanks,
Yeah.
man. Thanks." And he's like, "You were funny, dude. I'm sorry no one came, but
Uh,
kitchen says chicken sandwiches are on them."
have you always had this quick wit that you can just roll with whatever's said to you and you come up with something funny like right on the spot? Did that come from the improv training, or is that just something that's part of you?
I don't know, man. I think that like even when I fail to say something funny, I'll say something honest or maybe
Yeah.
insightful in that moment, or at least
Uh-huh.
there's like some empathy to it. And I think that in improv, they always teach you don't go for the joke. Like find the relationship, like find the
Uh-huh.
thing that's like that's deeper than surface, something that you can build upon. And I think that that was very good for me because now when there's someone who's a bit obstinate in the crowd who maybe isn't so eager to laugh, you can try and like talk to them directly while on stage and at least like show that you understand their position as
Mhm.
opposed to doing the classic like crowd work like, oh, what's the matter with this guy kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And I think that like there's this like prevalence in comedy now of the crowd work clips that we're just like
Yeah.
inundated with, like we're like just buried in this like constant comedian destroys heckler or like first date gone wrong, like all these clips that feed the algorithm. I think that
Uh-huh.
the bar has been set tremendously low for what decent crowd work is. And
Mhm.
now comics or I mean like crowd members will come up to me after the show and they'll be like, I love your crowd work. I love the way that you do it different. And it's like, how do you know that term? You're a person who like barely sees comedy. Why do you know it's called crowd work? And it's
Uh-huh.
because of these damn clips. So I think that like in order to maintain some kind of relevancy in like the realm of crowd work, you kind of have to like try and push it past its like the most logical base response that you might have. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to like do it a little bit different than other people are, I
Right.
guess.
Yeah,
I mean, like
it's that
there's geniuses at it. Harlan Williams, Ian Bagg, like these guys are
yeah,
really good at comedy,
yeah.
and I love watching that kind of thing. But then the issue is when you watch Ian Bagg the second or third show, you're like, oh, he just has a million lines.
Uh,
You know, like no matter who's presented in front of him, he just has a million lines for every different situation,
yeah,
which we're all guilty of. But when you can try and like kind of like push past those like initial impulses, like the line that you know works whenever a woman with a red hat is in the front row,
uh-huh,
you know, like that's when the exciting, like that's when like the marrow of the bone presents itself, and that's where the most
right.
sustenance is.
And there's definitely, I can definitely tell from your performances that you aren't pulling from a whole bunch of stuff that you are ready for.
Sure.
It's evident that you're in the moment, and you're not steering your crowd work to elicit something that you know is going to be funny.
Yeah, trying to steer it into a bit or something. And again, there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that. Like
right,
anytime that a comedian makes a crowd laugh, they've done their job
right,
and they should
yeah,
be, you know, applauded for doing so. I don't want to pretend like my way is better than any other way. It's just like this is the way that I like to do it, and this is like the most exciting way for me to do it,
hmm.
the most joyful way for me to do it.
Speaking about the clips and content creation in general, so it's all over the place. I can't look at social media without seeing, either a quick clip or the crowd work or the heckler or whatever. How
Yeah.
do you think that is affecting comedy in general?
I don't know, man. I sound like I'm 1,000 years old whenever I talk about this subject, but I don't think that it's a double-edged sword, right? So like it's good for comedy that people are watching more comedy because they
Mhm,
are. Like these clips are presenting them with more opportunities to see comedy and they take it in, whether it be in 30-second, 60-second nuggets. Like, okay, so the cultural vocabulary for comedy is going up. And like that
mhm,
should be good long term for comedians. But the kind of comedy that's being celebrated and being rewarded by the likes and the comment system, I don't know if that's the kind of comedy that we should be, not that we should be, but I don't know if that's the kind of shit that like, I'm sorry, can I swear on here?
yeah, yeah,
Okay. I just don't know, like, if that's what we're, like, teaching crowds to, expect and
mhm,
or, kind of, like, molding them into thinking like that is good comedy, I don't know if that's good for comedy as a whole.
mhm,
Um, so it's this like Ouroboros of like a snake eating its own ass of like, okay, people are excited for comedy, but they're excited for this kind of comedy. And then they
uh-huh,
go out expecting this kind of comedy. And when they don't get that kind of comedy, then they don't like comedy again. You
yeah,
know? Like
yeah,
it's this big Ferris wheel of expectation and the expectations not being met.
uh-huh,
So yeah, I don't know, dude. I want to say that it's probably good, but at the same time, I think it's creating a crowd member who wants to interact with the audience or wants to interact with the comedian.
yeah,
And now when you try and talk to a comedian or try and talk to an audience, they expect that you're trying to create content from it. So
mhm,
either they'll be stone faced or they'll be sitting there the whole time. Like, you know, if you talk to the table on the right, I've experienced the table on the left is waiting for you to come over and talk to them. And when you do, they have what they think is a witty rejoinder, or they have a great joke ready to go. And they're just sitting there so eager to say this thing when you talk to them that they're A, not present, they're B,
uh-huh,
not engaged in the show, and C, whatever they say is always going to sound so stupid. You know what I
uh-huh,
mean?
yeah,
Like the joke that the crowd comes up with that they think is going to feed you. It's like, I just need you to be yourself and I'll talk to you and I'm not going to exploit you, you know?
yeah,
But at the
yeah,
same time, like, don't just sit there trying to, you know, gotcha me with something you think, you know, you go to talk to a woman and the husband's so eager to tell you some like dark, vile secret of hers. And then it just turns off the whole room. You're like, oh, why would you say that to a stranger? What's the matter with you?
I get paid to do this. You should just enjoy the show.
Yeah, yeah, and, like, just, like, if I ask you, like, "What do you do?" or "Where are you from?" Don't be like, you know, "What do I do?" "Him." "Where am I from?" "The toilet." You know, it's like, no, that's terrible. You're not from the toilet. I know you're not from the toilet. So, yeah, dude, I don't know. I don't know if it's, we'll see, you know? We'll see. I think social media in general is very bad for anyone whose brain works.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I take frequent breaks from it just because I can't, and I'll just podcast and get off. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely just a quagmire of shit. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not good.
And
So
also, like, I'm very guilty of not doing I'm not the best at like business or like making the decisions, because I remember when I was starting comedy and people were like, get your YouTube together, and I was like, well, who cares? And then we're like, well, get big on Twitter, and I was like, I don't enjoy Twitter. Like, I can
mhm,
tell this is a waste of time.
mhm,
And then like people got careers off of Twitter, and then they were like, okay, well, now you need to build your Instagram following, and I was like, oh, that doesn't interest me. And now you see people who are maybe not as skilled, or maybe they don't have the chops, or like the years under their belt of experience that other people have, but because they were so on the forefront of adapting digitally, they're rewarded and their careers are good, and good for them. But it's like, I don't want to sit at my computer all day and like think up new 1 minute sketches. I don't want to just keep feeding pieces of myself or my
yeah,
attention into this buzzsaw that is social media.
yeah,
And I probably won't sell as many tickets as people who do that, but at least my days are like my own. I didn't
yeah,
I didn't get into stand up to have a job.
yeah,
And like, you have to have like 8 jobs now to be a comedian.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, so again, like, don't listen too much to me, because I could have made a lot better decisions coming up, but instead I wanted to learn how to like cook delicious curries, and
yeah.
become a scratch frisbee golf player, you know?
Oh, my son loves frisbee golf.
Yeah, it's fun, man.
Yeah,
You should get out there and play with the boy.
yeah, yeah.
It's just a way to walk around the park. It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never gone with him. Yeah.
Oh, it's a hoot, man. I mean, you eat one of those edibles, go outside with your boy, whip that disc around.
Uh,
You'll see how beautiful every leaf is on that tree, man.
yeah. Oh, that's great. So, what do you do in preparation for a show? Just, do you have like a routine? Do you have anything that gets you ready for the show, or do you just jump in and do it?
I like to I'm I like to get to the venue an hour early. If maybe, I mean, a half hour early is my preference, like before the show starts,
Hmm.
so I can pace nervously until the minute I go on stage.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't I've never I don't know. I always thought it'd be easier when people were coming to see you,
Hmm.
you know? Like, you'd have more confidence, but now, like, they like you and you don't wanna disappoint them, so I feel
Uh-huh.
like this immense pressure on me now to do very well,
Uh-huh.
as opposed to back in the day when it was just strangers and the room was papered. If you made them laugh, like, that exceeded their expectations,
Yeah.
and it was easier. But now when they're out there to see you and they bring their friends, you're like, "Oh god. Oh, no." So, yeah, it's a lot of pacing. I like to have a sugar-free Red Bull and, 1 to 3 Miller Lights before I go on stage.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, that's about it, man. I mean, the worst part of stand-up now is, like, trying to avoid being hungover,
Uh-huh.
Like, I've learned not to drink on Thursday night, because you can't go into Friday hungover. Because on Friday, then you have to drink to beat that hangover, and then on Saturday, you have 2 days of cumulative hangover, and you're like, "Oh god." So, yeah, I don't take shots anymore.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I wish I had, like, more of some kind of regimen that I abided by, but no, it's just pacing. It's just
Uh-huh.
active pacing until they say my name.
So you still get jitters.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like, I think that if you have like a bulletproof 45 minutes, you probably abate the jitters a little bit, but
Mhm.
no, when I'm trying to go up there and talk about my day and do crowd work, it's like, "Oh god, is my brain gonna work?"
Yeah.
You know?
So you've got fans. What does a typical fan of yours look like?
Um,
Not look like, what are they like?
I mean, I don't know, dude. It's weird. Because like what it's really hard for me to quantify what a typical fan is, because people now are coming from the book
Uh-huh.
as well as they're coming from my stand up and
Uh-huh.
like my podcast appearances. So when people come out to see me, you can have everyone from like, hardworking blue collar people who are out to, drink a bunch of Bud Lights and, get pretty sleepy by the end of the show, to people who really enjoy the work of Cormac McCarthy and Dennis Johnson and fell in love with my book. And then they come out and they're sitting next to these people who are clearly on mushrooms. Like, I'm very grateful that my demographics are pretty sweeping, and it's pretty tough to like nail down. I don't know, because like there's a lot of people who have a like an older frat boy audience, and I have those people, and they're great, and they want to come out and just have a good time and drink, and then there's people who have maybe never been to a comedy show before, or if they have, they've only been to see Marc Maron or Maria Bamford. But because people they respect, like my book, they're coming out. So it's a big cross section of this big, beautiful country of ours. And learning to entertain all of them and meet all their expectations has been very it's been very good for me as a person who does comedy, Yeah. I mean, the other, like, I was at Looney's Comedy Corner, excuse me, in Colorado Springs this last weekend, and they were one of the first clubs to ever headline me. So like, I love those guys, but I was never a big ticket seller down there. But this weekend we sold out 2 of the shows, and the other 2 shows were like damn near close. And so there's the big middle pit area of the room, and there's about 150, 200 people in the middle. Then they have risers on the right and the left, and they're elevated, and those are the VIP seats. And on the early show Saturday, I walk on stage, and on the left side of the stage is the Sons of Silence motorcycle gang, and they're there full patched up, okay? And on the other side of the room was my brother-in-law's family, and he's a beautiful black man. So there was 25 very fly, very well put together black people, and my sister. And whenever I told a joke and the motorcycle guys lagged it, they barked like dogs. So I would say a joke and they would laugh, and they'd go, oof, 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 oof. And I do a joke about the posture of an Aryan Brotherhood member. And when I told this joke just to see if the bikers would like it too much, and sure enough, I said Aryan Brotherhood, and they started barking, and I was like, no, bad. And I had this whole like interplay of like apologizing for the bikers to my family, and then also threatening the bikers and telling them I was going to beat them up, calling them motor boys. Like it was this fun dichotomy that was created. And I think that dichotomy exists a lot in the shows that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, it's like bringing people together. They had a better understanding of each other after the show than when they walked in.
I don't know if there's a better understanding, but at least they shared the same space for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At least they were all in the same room, and they
Yeah.
were all laughing at the same thing for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But I think that if you can figure out how to make the motorcycle gang laugh at the copper wire stealing jokes, and then also make like the erudite young black professionals laugh, if you can check all those boxes, I think you're doing a good job as a performer.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So what's the best piece of advice you ever got?
Best piece of advice I ever got. I don't know. I admired a comic who was very much in the moment and very good at improvising, and he told me that it was his goal to have his sets be traded like Grateful Dead tapes, where he was like, yeah, I want people to like get on forums and be like, I've got Kansas City November 2017, does anyone have Syracuse February 2019? And I've always liked that idea of like the shows that I do being like, you have to be in the room for that show to see that show.
Yeah.
So I admired that. But then I heard a piece of advice where it's like every night that you take off, someone's getting funnier than you. So like I took that to heart very sincerely. This is the second, third, fourth years I was out, because I did stand up every night to the detriment of my health and my interpersonal relationships, and often my housing situation. I was at shows every night, and I remember there was a comic named, I think, Sammy Obeid, who did something where he did stand up 365 days in a row.
Uh-huh.
I remember hearing that and being so pissed because I was like, where did he get up during Christmas?
Yeah.
You know, like Christmas night, where did he get up? Easter, where did he perform? And I remember I asked him that later on because, like, you know, I got the memory of an angry elephant. I just have
Uh-huh.
this chip on my shoulder because I'm so hyper competitive. And I was like, so, hey, when you did that whole 1 year straight stunt, where did you get up on Christmas? And he was like, oh, I just like went to a restaurant and stood on a table and asked if anyone wanted to hear any jokes. And I was like, oh, so you were ambushing these people. Does that count? But yeah, no nights off. And I mean, I think that that's like, you know, I definitely, I'm on the road every weekend and I still abide by that ethos. But when I'm home now, it's like I want to hang out with my wife and
Yeah.
make sure that my marriage is solid because I very much value being a good husband or a good son or a good brother or a good friend more than I want to be like a good comedian, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you've already achieved the great comedian status, so you just
Well,
have
that's
to.
I wouldn't say great. I think that I can, you know, I can do the job, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you do well. Um, so this is the part of the show that's relatively new that I like to call "Is This Anything?"
Okay.
Um, and this is where, and if you didn't bring one, that's fine. Where we bring a joke, a bit, a premise, or something that we want to work out, and bounce it off each other and see if we can come up with something. And
Okay.
since
All
you're the
right. Was that in the show notes? I'm sorry. I didn't read
and
it.
that's it's totally cool.
Okay.
If you've got something you're working on, that's great.
Okay.
I brought a short one, so you can decide who goes first, either me or you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a little joke inside of a bigger bit that I'm working out.
Okay.
Um, I knew that my kids became more sophisticated than me when they started pronouncing the T in often. Like, hey, Dad, how often are you going to hit us up for money? In my house, it's often with no T, and I only hit you up for money as often as I need to post bail.
I love it. I
That's
love that. I love those very small observations. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
that's a thought that I've never ever had before, but I feel like subconsciously I've had that thought. When people hit that T,
uh-huh,
you know that they're putting on airs. You know they used to summer somewhere. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like they probably had like they probably had an au pair. You know what I mean?
uh-huh,
So yeah, yeah, I love that, man. That's good. Your kid's hitting the tee and it pissing you off is
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. Where'd you
yeah,
learn that? Where'd you learn that, boy? Out on the frisbee golf course?
yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny because I noticed it, so I looked it up, and it really is in Great Britain. It is like a sign of being higher class.
Dignity,
If
yeah.
yeah, if
Mhm.
you pronounce
Dignified,
it,
excuse me.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I it's that's one that's been rolling around forever, and hopefully it's going to be part of a bigger bit. But I just I thought it was kind of a weird take, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird too because like a big signifier of people learning English as a second language is they don't use contractions.
Mhm,
So they say cannot, do not instead of abbreviations.
mhm.
And it's funny that in England they're like putting the T in real hard. You know,
Yeah,
they're adding a T where it's not
yeah.
necessary. Yeah, I like that bit, man. That's good.
Thank you. You
Yeah,
got
yeah.
anything? You don't
I
have
got a
to.
bit. Well, I have a bit that's been it's been very exciting to try and figure out how to do it,
Mhm.
but it's hard to set up because people get turned off by the premise. But it's like, you know, you see a young kid in the crowd and, you know, you talk to him and then it's just this whole thing that they said that they got rid of bullying, you know, like that was like a big campaign for a lot of, I think it was, you know, first ladies and stuff. They were like, we're going to eradicate bullying. And but now that they've gotten rid of bullying, the kids don't have to fear anything except for school shootings. So, my take on it is, you know, and I think that's good, but honestly, I was depantsed once in 4th grade. And you know, they got the shorts and the underwear, and everyone at the Denver Art Museum on that field trip saw my little tiny penis. And I tell you what, I would have rather been shot in the damn head. I would have rather suffered a pipe bombing than have everyone see my little boy, my little pubeless boy penis, you know.
Uh,
So yeah, trying to get into that is proven a bit difficult to to maneuver, but it's fun to try and figure out how to do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like that, and I think that would hit. Have you tried it on stage?
Well, yeah, I've tried it. I've tried it like probably 6 times at this point,
Uh
and
huh.
it's just I was in Colorado Springs this weekend, and the weekend before was that violent atrocity
Yeah.
at the gay bar. So like uh I did not try it in Colorado Springs, you
Yeah.
know. And it's just like random violence has touched so many Americans, and
Yeah.
to remind them of that. That's not I'd rather like not be able to do that funny joke than bum someone out. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm never worried if people think I'm smart or perceptive. I just want them to laugh as much as they possibly can. But
Right. Right.
I
Yeah.
know that's a damn good joke.
Yeah. I know. And the only problem is it's always too soon because
Oh, for
it
sure.
happens too
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I feel like if I can get to the point where maybe 60% of the people to see me are there because they like me or they know that like I don't, they're familiar with my comedy,
Yeah.
I could pull that off. But I'm right in that weird situation where it's like, 50%, 40% fans, and then still like people who are just going out to see a night of comedy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that if I was 100% like my tickets being sold, I could
Uh-huh.
probably pull that off. And I look
Yeah.
forward to the day when I can dust off that old gem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really really like it. Yeah. It's and you're right. If they don't know you, if they don't, it would have to be later in the set when they know where you're coming from and know who you are, and
Yeah,
then
yeah. That's
yeah,
definitely a check drop bit.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, that would yeah, I would definitely laugh at that. That's a good one. So Sam, where can folks find you online and all that stuff?
My website, samtalent.com, Tallent, has all my tour dates, and you can buy my novel, and you can buy my T-shirt on there. At Sam Talent on Instagram, if you want more of a day-to-day uh, situation. I don't really care about Twitter at all. I don't have a TikTok because I feel like there's something pedophilic about it. If I had a TikTok, I feel like I'd be on a watch list.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just at Sam Talent on Instagram and samtalent.com. I also have a podcast called Chubby Behemoth, which
Yeah.
is a lot of fun with my co-host Nathan Lund, and we just
Uh,
try to be funny for an hour once a week. And then there's a Patreon if you want an extra episode. You know, just the classic trappings of a modern comedian.
all right.
Yeah.
Great. Well, it's
Oh,
been.
hey,
Go
I'm
ahead.
gonna be I'm gonna be at Zany's in Chicago, December 9th and 10th.
All
All
right.
right, and I'm trying to
Nice.
sell those out because and it's not even for my. I just like the power.
Yeah.
I just get off on the power of it. So yeah, it would definitely help me if you guys would come see me in Chicago, December 9th and 10th at Zany's downtown.
You're in Tuscaloosa in February, second or
February, yeah,
third?
I think so. I think the second or the third. I can't
Okay.
remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm gonna try to go to that because
yeah, yeah. Come through.
Tuscaloosa is just a couple hours from here. So yeah,
Oh, I know, dude. I know all
yeah,
about it. I've been to
yeah.
T-Town a lot. Yeah. I love Birmingham. I love Tuscaloosa. I love Huntsville. I love Mobile even. But man, Montgomery, what the hell
Yeah.
happened there?
Well, they had that song, and
They did, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. John Prine, thank
John
you.
Prine just fucked it for him. So
Yes, he did, yeah.
excellent. Hey, one more question. You seem like a
Sure.
music guy. What music are you listening to these days?
Man, I wish I could say that I was listening to a lot of music these days. I've been listening to a lot of books on tapes and podcasts.
Uh-huh.
But oh, I just turned my little cousin Henry onto the Oblivions. They're out of Memphis. They're just like
Okay.
classic rock and roll.
Uh-huh.
The Revelators out of Missouri, more
Oh
classic
yeah.
rock and roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, like, four on the floor stomping music that would
Uh-huh.
make a lot of people. I like music that sounds like Elvis if he was on PCP.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Hillbilly Casino?
No, I have not.
Check them out. That is definitely Elvis on PCP.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're really,
Hillbilly Casino.
yeah. So they're a band that I like, and I think you'd like them too. It's a duo. It's just it's kind of a White Stripes type deal, but better. It's
Better
called
than
they're
the White
called Volk.
Stripes.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
They're called Volk, VOLK, and they're out of Nashville, and they were on the tour with Hillbilly Casino and the Delta Bombers. So we saw them in Nashville, and I've seen them quite a few times because their record labels in Indianapolis, so they go there for the record label stuff. But they're just fantastic. They're like rockabilly punk, and
I love that. I love that kind of
really good
stuff.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll send you some links. I think
Please
maybe
do.
I'll make you a mixtape, my
Whoa, we're taking this
Spotify
to the next
mixtape.
level, huh?
Yeah, I do that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I love it, man. Yeah, turn me on. Turn
Yeah.
me on, Daddy Scott.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. It was great to get to know you, and the book, like I said, is just fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. I really appreciate it. And thank you for telling your people about the book previous
Yeah,
to us meeting. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah. I had to. it was necessary.
Thank you, dude.